So thank you once again for making it a date with us. We're going to start the session this time with Professor Morenike Ukpong, who we took last week, on how to write an impactful manuscript discussion. So immediately after this session, this recording goes on the YouTube page, so you can also listen to it, or if possible, also download it off YouTube. All right, thank you very much. Let's listen. We'll be back after the talk.
Is writing an impactful manuscript discussion, but please note that the lessons you learn, it's also applicable to thesis. And to introduce this session, note that before you got here, you've done a lot of brilliant work. However, getting here will reinforce what you have done in a way that makes people discuss about your paper or your thesis. This is the point where you own and yourself would be expressed. And let me explain that. When you did the introduction of your thesis or your manuscript, what you did was unearth information that was already existing in the field. In the introduction, you never express yourself. The only point where you seemingly express yourself in the introduction is your research questions, your objective. That is where your thinking comes into play after unearthing the information in the field. So you tend to find that your introduction of your research, or the literature review, which is the bigger expansion of your introduction, is full of references. It's full of references because what are you doing in that section? You're trying to tell everybody in the world what exists, what gap there is, and what you want to do. And for many others, when you're situating what you want to do, you're then bringing your theories or your conceptual framework to support what you want to do. So it's not your story at that point. It's other people's story, what they've done, and yourself is only that I want to do this research question. You then move on to the bigger piece, the major piece of your work, which is your methodology. Once again, the methodology is not you. It's using what exists in terms of standards. The standard ways of research is being done. You tell us your study design. You're not inventing a study design. It's not impossible, it's not impossible. But for the majority, you're not going to invent a study design. You would use existing study designs to do what it is that you want to do. You tell us your sample size, you tell us your study population, including your inclusion and exclusion criteria. You describe your tool if you have tools to use, and let us know what it is and how it's standardized. You tell us your variables and describe variables. For most part, you would be using references to what exists. You then go on to your result, which is very important. And then you tell us what is the outcome of your analysis, be it qualitative analysis or quantitative analysis or mixed methods. You tell us what it is. We've gone through all that up to this point. Now you have to discuss. This discussion is the point where your brilliance starts to show, because your discussion starts to tell us, explain to us. And that's what our discussion is. Remember, the word is discussion. It's not highlighting, it's not pointing, it says discuss. And that discussion means you are explaining the reason why this result is so. And this is where you can say, I don't even know why it is so. This result I'm seeing is so different from what the rest of the world has seen. Oh. This is explaining. And then you'll explain that maybe this is the reason why it's different. Or this result I'm seeing is the same as everybody has seen. But you must explain why it is like everybody has seen. Why? Because when you started at the introduction, you said there was a gap in knowledge. You said there was a gap in knowledge, and therefore you are trying to fill a gap in knowledge. So if at the end of the day, when you were filling the gap in knowledge, Your result is exactly the same like every other result that you have seen. You must explain it also. It's like everybody else, despite the fact that, and then you must explain. So that's the big deal about the discussion. It is your brilliance. It is your brilliance. It is your thinking that comes into discussion. And this is the reason your paper is quoted. I repeat, it is this discussion that gives the bite for your paper to be quoted. It's not your introduction. Remember, your introduction is somebody else's literature review. You are bringing people's literature reviews. So they won't quote your paper for your literature review because they can go to that paper and read it and quote the paper directly. They won't quote your paper for your methodology because it's methodology, except you're doing something that is new. They won't quote your paper for your results, except they're doing systematic review or meta-analysis or scoping reviews, maybe, yes. They, those reviews, they might quote your result, but that's not the convention. But for somebody to quote your paper as a reference, it's your discussion. So that's why it's powerful. And you must learn how to do it well. So let's go into the myth. I am aware that there are other people that are not necessarily from IFE here. So please know that this program is organized by the Central Office of Research once again in IFE. And IFE is, for one thing, learning and culture. We do know IFE is the best there is. It's a standard university, the reference university. We're very proud of our culture, and one of which is open to the rest of the world to participate. But in case you do want to visit IFE at any time, please know that the Central Office of Research is open. You can find your way to the Central Office of Research and we will take you around. Just let them know that, you're from the short course. And that's all. That's all gets you a space. Even if you need a sitting space, like you want to break, a 1-week break, you want to find support for your research, come to the Central Office of Research. We have a desk for you. Believe me, and I'm not faking. We have a desk for you to sit around and do your research. So today I'm going to take you very briefly. The number of my slides is short and we're open up to a lot of discussion if you want to talk about things. And hopefully you'll be able to understand how to discuss and interpret your research finding, contrast and compare finding, which is unusual, and make valid inferences and be able to make recommendations. So I'll be taking you through this using this outline. Why is the discussion section important? What should be the content of the discussion section? How you write a powerful, impactful discussion section that makes it possible for your paper to be quoted and referenced. And then I give the summary and the conclusion. Like I did say, the big part, or I always say the big part of a manuscript that makes it get into publication in the first place is your methodology. It must be sound. But the big thing about your thesis or your manuscript that gets it to be referenced is your discussion. Okay, but it's one of the hardest parts to write. I know that it's a lot harder to write that discussion section than the introduction. Methodology is almost like reading ABC. When you're starting primary school and they're teaching you how to read ABC, it's just to cram it. Methodology is following a standard. Get your reference guidelines. You know how to do that. There's no reference guideline on how to do discussion. So you must be a writer. You must bring the brilliance of literacy writing, like you want to write a novel that is engaging. That is what makes it tough. And because people do not recognize the need for the skills, they write a very brilliant piece of work so shabbily that it ends up not getting the traction that it otherwise should get. So it can be the hardest, but there's a skill to it. Once you know what it should be, then you put the flow to it. And that's why when we do these things, you cannot be alone. If you're writing your thesis, your supervisor becomes very important to help you shape and direct this. Even if you are a student, you don't need to just hang on to your student. Get other people, get your mentors that does not necessarily have to be your supervisor. Get your friends, your senior friends. Get people who are already, even if it's walking into your faculty or your department and going and knocking on the door of a senior person and say, please, I need your help to help me to read this and improve it. Many will open their doors to do it. Get the best to your supervisor so that it's just crossing the T's and dotting the I's. But they help you to get that narrative story. Okay, so it's an effective discussion section tells the reader what your study means and why it's important. What new things have you arched? What door have you knocked? What kernel have you broken? And I've got people make reference. I say, oh, I never knew this. Oh, it's a discussion that made me see this. Oh, people must learn something. This is the point where you're telling them, this is the eureka I've brought on board through my research. It is that discussion that opens them up to the eureka. And from your perspective, not necessarily from theirs. They can read the paper and see the result and say something else, but you must tell them the eureka story. It's your ingenuity. It's where you reflect on your concept, your issues, and share with the rest of the world your reflection. And this is the point where you start to share with them hypotheses that you're developing. And this is the point where you're talking them about future research. This is the point where you're saying my story is of importance for policy. My story is important for the next step of future research. My story is important for programming. This is where you're helping them to see it. Okay? And once again, this is the point that makes your research important and makes people reference your thesis or your manuscript. So what should you see in your discussion section? You need to say the following for you to say you have written a discussion. Many people do not know, but if you can follow the step, many people don't follow the step. You might find it haphazardly, you're looking everywhere and it's okay, it is there. But if you can systematically ensure that you follow this then it is clear that you have a good discussion. The first thing in the discussion section should be a summary. Be it thesis or manuscript. Your first paragraph should open us to say, this is the summary of your findings with respect to your study objectives. It might be the first, it might be the first two, it might be the first three. For manuscripts, it's usually one paragraph, so most times, but for thesis where you have 3-4 objectives, you might be talking about 2-3 paragraphs or thereabout. But the opening paragraph of a discussion is the summary of your finding, using words that are different from the words you use in the research section and the results section, and you see why it has to be different. You cannot be repeating the results in your discussion. So for example, in the results section, I found out that 25% were females and 10% had tertiary education. In my discussion section, I'll be saying things like 1 in 4 participants are girls and 1 in 10 are tertiary education. Remember, this 1 in 10 and 1 in 4 is an interpretation of the 25%. One of the things I find many times is people writing the interpretation of their results in the results section. If you do that already, you now find it difficult to write the summary because you'll have to repeat the figures and the things you've done. That's the challenge. So,
sorry, the network went off. I'm resharing now. Yeah.
paragraph of a discussion is the summary of your finding, using words that are different from the words you use in the research section and use the results section, and you see why it has to be different. You cannot be repeating the results in your discussion. So for example, in the results section, I found out that 25% were females and 10% had tertiary education. In my results, in my discussion section, I'll be saying things like 1 in 4 participants are girls and 1 in 10 have tertiary education. Remember, this 1 in 10 and 1 in 4 is an interpretation of the 25%. One of the things I find many times is people writing the interpretation of their results in the results section. This is, if you do that already, you now find it difficult to write the summary because you'll have to repeat the figures and the things you've done. That's the challenge. So try to distinguish this. Once you have a results section, write the results. Then when you get to the discussion section, the first paragraph, which is your summary, starts to reflect, show the interpretation of what you're finding without, going into details. So 1 in 4, if that is a quantitative study, if it's a qualitative study, you start to introduce, you must let us know what your finding is with respect to your objective. That's the first paragraph, or there about the first introduction. Many times when we get to the discussion, be it thesis, you just find people go straight to comparing and say result. No. First, ease us into that section by writing a summary. The next thing you write, if you follow current standard, is the strength. What is the strength of your study? They say that it's the first study ever. It's working in a population that has not been done. It's using a methodology that had not been used for the same study. It's based on a theoretical framework that they had not used before. What is the strength of your study? Let's know that as the second paragraph. The third paragraph is usually limitations. I do know that as a convention for most people, the limitations of your study, if you are doing a thesis, the limitation of your study is after your discussion. There's a limitation. Some people have chapters where they have to write the limitations. Some people might have to write limitations somewhere. But in the manuscript, if you're writing a manuscript, the convention and the expected based on guidelines is that your limitation comes after the strength. And you write a limitation because people can look through the lens of the limitation to give meaning to your study findings. They must first be introduced to the bias, to the limitation of interpretation, before they go to read the main thing. However, once again, I repeat, if you are writing a thesis, it's usually expected that you'll have a chapter or a section that is noting the limitations of your findings. Okay, and then you now go down to the meat of the matter, explaining the meanings of your finding and how they relate to what others have done. So you explain. Why did you see this? Why did you observe this? Why did you think they said this? Why did you think this theme emerged? You explain what is possible using existing literature, using your experience, and this is where you do a lot of new reading because you're explaining why. Why is this so? Why am I seeing this? Why am I observing that people in Nigeria, as opposed to people in Kenya, but like people in the US, are thinking like this, are saying this, are finding this? This is where you have to start explaining. And many times it involves you reading anew. Of course, I've heard people ask, do you bring in new references at this point? Yes, because at this point you're saying something new and you have to explain it. So if you have to bring in new references, so be it. Your references is not limited to those references you've used in your introduction. So you explain anything that is surprising, anything that is unexpected, anything that is inconclusive. You explain even those things that may otherwise not be surprising. But they should be surprising, remember, because your work, be it thesis or research manuscripts, you were answering an unknown. You can't come and do things because, we already have the answer, and then you're doing it. There's no research like that. Your research is saying there is something that we do not know, and therefore I am here to do this piece of work. And there must be a reason why there's not known and why that result must be important. So you must explain it. And you suggest, as you're going towards your conclusion, you start to suggest things for further research, because you would have highlighted gaps that you couldn't address. And that's why when somebody picks up your discussion, they read from you. What is it for further research? And because they're going to go and do that further research, your paper becomes the reference. Your paper becomes the reference because your paper is highlighting an unknown, is showing the way, the next path. Your paper therefore becomes a reference. Before you, in addition to that, please know that you must also include what your paper has done. Is there anything that is relevant for policies, for programming, for new ways of doing things, for new ways of asking questions? This is something also your discussion session can highlight. Very important to do this. Please note, when you're doing the discussion session, there are things that should not be. I know this is practically what many of us do, but please note that I'm asking to improve the quality of what you do. This is the way to go. 1, you don't repeat the data of your results in your discussion. It's a common error. So in your results, you got 25%, 30%, then you come in your discussion and start to repeat it. We saw 25% girls, 30% boys. This is lower than the 30% in Uganda and higher than the 15% in Kenya. You can raise those other figures, but you don't bring your data. So you can say the finding of our result shows that the prevalence of girls involved in fighting is higher than the 15% in Kenya and lower than the 72% in Mauritania. Something like that, and then you explain it. But you don't repeat your results. You don't repeat your results. You don't bring your results from previous section, okay, in the section. It's also very important that you don't bring new results. You are going to discuss the data that you have reported. You cannot be reporting new data in your discussion. Where did this data come from? You can't be reporting new data that is not in your results. This is basically for thesis and for manuscript. So what you're discussing is the data you raised in your results. Don't discuss data that doesn't exist. Okay? And then you don't discuss things outside the scope of the study objective. So let me explain this a little. So your study objective is to look at if there are more girls that are bullies than boys. Okay? There are more girls that are bullies than boys. When you were doing this, you collected data that also included variables that you wanted to, adjust for confounding. So you included their age, you included their socioeconomic status, you included their employment, their income. And when you did your analysis, you adjusted for this. Of course, your adjustment will show maybe there was association between income and bullying. It showed association between age and bullying. But remember, that's not your objective. Those things were put in because you are adjusting for them. Your study is to look at gender and bullying. When you are discussing, please focus on gender and bullying, not on income and bullying, age and bullying, which was not your objective, but those variables were included in your analysis because you needed to adjust for them. Okay? Although if you do that, it's called the fallacy, a table 1 fallacy or table 2. It's a fallacy. You don't discuss the findings that is resulting from your associations. You can discuss and even if you do this, if your objective is that and your objective was not to look at the proportion of people that are bullied, you can't be discussing the proportion. Focus on your study objectives. That is your discussion. I hope I'm communicating here. Many times we stray into discussing things that are not our objectives. When you're doing a thesis, you have 5 objectives, you have 6 objectives. Focus on discussing the objectives, and you can write it as sections and discuss your objectives. Don't waste 5 pages discussing what is not relevant. I see that so many times. It's not the way to go. It's not the way to do a smart piece of work. And I'm sure many people know that your thesis should be quoted. People quote thesis, okay? And then when you're discussing, do not go making sweeping statement. For example, you saw 50 girls and 50 girls are bullied. Remember that your data was collected in University of Ife. If University of Ife, that was where your data was collected. And then you now say, oh, there are more girls that are bullies. It's only in Ife now that you studied. You didn't even study and it was only in University of Ife. You didn't study in primary schools. You didn't study in secondary schools. You didn't study in polytechnics. You didn't study PG students. You didn't study in Lagos and Ibadan and Kano and Enugu. It's only Ife. Then you now say girls are bullies. No, that's a sweeping statement. You can't infer that beyond the people you have. So those are the kind of things that are sweeping statements. You must align properly your finding with your objective. And don't give unwarranted speculations. For example, you found out that more girls are bullies in Ile-Ife. And then you now say, we have to be careful because when girls become bullies, they cannot become leaders of this nation. And then and we wanted to look for the first female president. The fact that girls are bullies, there's no place for them to be the president of the nation. That's unwarranted speculation. Your study did not find that. Your study did not go there. So why are you speculating and going in that tangential direction? The focus is that there are more bullies. What's the implication for Ile-Ife? Okay? And within the limit of your study finding, you discuss what you have found. You cannot be going haywire outside the scope of the study finding. Okay, and that happens when you're going tangential to the issues. Remember you are looking at bullying and in terms of university, and now you're starting to talk about becoming political leaders. That's not what your study is about, and how they're going to be president in future. No. Okay, and then finally, do not make conclusions that are not supported by your data. Okay, so for example, you found out that there are 20 girls that are bullying and 5 boys that are bullies in the Obafemi Awolowo University. Okay, and then you now conclude that there are significantly more boys than girls without doing a statistical analysis that is looking for significant difference. You are just concluding by the numbers that there's significantly more girls. That's an overestimation. That is a conclusion that is not supported by your data. You can say that the proportion or the percentage or the proportion of girls that are bullies in OAU is more than the boys. That's a valid conclusion. But saying that there are significantly more without a statistical analysis, that is is a stretch of the truth. It's not a valid conclusion. Okay. Can somebody put off all those videos that distracted me? Please just put off the videos. So when you're talking about the discussion section, please, it's important that you make it, when you're writing, don't write as if you are the science or these science people that are grouchy. Make it like a story. You're telling a novel. Okay? It must be interesting. It must be relevant. It must flow. One paragraph must flow into the next. First of all, discuss the key findings, the ones that you feel are powerful, new, captivating. Discuss that first. And then link them together. Don't say number 1, there are more girls than boys that are bullied. And then you say this finding is less than what we found in Uganda, but it's more than what we found in the rest of Lagos. Then the next one, number 2, there are more girls in economics that are bullies than girls in health sciences. Well, this is not similar to what is. It's not interesting. Okay, you link it. You do, okay, there are more girls, and then you explain more girls, but you find out that girls, the past studies have, however, shown that the variation in girls depends on the courses where they did, or it depends on the schools where they came up, or it depends on their geographical area. And this is also similar to what we found in our study. I've now linked it to the next one. I'm linking my first one to the next one, and then it makes it a story. It makes it a story. Treat it as a whole, not independent parts. Ensure that you have transition statements, and therefore the whole story of your findings are linked together, not as if they are separate and independent findings that are going on their own. It comes with skills, it comes with practice, but please know every single student, postgraduate student, undergraduate student, researcher can do this. It's a skill that comes to you, and the more you do it. So again, once you have done your discussion, you must write your conclusion. Your conclusion is very short. It's usually a paragraph. I am surprised when I see conclusion and I'm seeing 3 new paragraphs in the conclusion. That's an unusual piece when you're writing a manuscript. When you're writing your thesis, your conclusion is stating boldly what the answers to your objective. So if it's a manuscript, you state the most important thing, highlight its significance, and state the future direction. It's just 1 paragraph. For thesis, you just highlight the answers to your thesis objective. That's what you're highlighting. How you've answered your thesis objective. Your conclusion should not be introducing a new argument or introducing new data at all. Conclusion is the end of the story. That's what conclusion is. This film has come to an end. This drama has come to an end. I'm about to draw the curtain. That's what conclusion is. So you can't be introducing new arguments, new data, or you conclude without telling us what your finding is and why it's important and what the significance is. Then it cannot be a good conclusion. Your conclusion is that I'm drawing the curtains. I am now drawing the curtains on this story, or drawing the curtains on this research. And this is the most important things that I've found. This is the significance of this finding. And going forward, this is the way we should go. Okay, that's what your conclusion should be about. Once again, please, for those that have theses, we recognize that institutions have ways or directions that they give you in terms of what you should write. Follow the regulations of your institutions as to what is the content of your thesis, or the content of the outline of your thesis. That's very important for those of you writing thesis. All right, so once again, the conclusion of your discussion. In conclusion, please note that discussion is what makes your paper quoted. This is the reflection of you. This is the reflection of your ingenuity, and it's your understanding of your study and how it results in new propositions or new hypotheses. And for those that use grounded theories, what is the new theory you're proposing? This is one of the 2 reasons your paper is quoted, and it's the most powerful reason why your papers will be quoted for many years. You find some papers 1942, that's when they wrote it, they're still quoting it till now. It's because of the brilliance. It's not because of their literature review or their methodology. It's because of the brilliance of their discussion. That is what is making it still relevant 50 years after it has been written. So make yours one of those, okay? Make yours one of those powerful ones where you start to delve into your results and start to explain it powerfully. That makes people's eyes pop. Wow, I never saw this dimension. Wow. Okay, that's what your discussion should do. And it does that by telling a coherent story. You must use languages that reflect the study design. Do not overstretch the truth. Do not reflect your personal biases. This is also one of the places where you start to see personal biases. So you look at a study, you saw that girls are having girls and boys in undergraduate studies are cohabiting. And because you're a very religious person that does not like girls and boys to be cohabiting, then in your discussion, you now to start. The world is going to an end. The sin of these people are becoming too much. how are we going to solve it? That's your story. Because in your heart, you are so biased because your upbringing does not allow for cohabiting, and therefore the world is going to come to an end now. So I know that is a fast stretch, but this is the kind of thing we're saying, that your discussion, remember that this is about sharing the truth. You can't overstretch it, and you can't be reflecting your biases there. It's about letting us see the truth. From you just put the truth, and all of us that are reading will reflect on it based on our own biases. It's not your biases. Don't discuss and interpret results based on your biases. Just present the truth that is, and reflect based on what is known out there already, or what should be known from your perspective. And the discussion should always give new directions to all readers. So on that note, I want to say thank you for listening. And please, if there's any question, I'm willing to answer at this point in time. Over to you, Dimeji.
All right,
Right, so there we have it. Thank you for staying with us. Yeah, even though it's a repeat, it's a recorded session. Thank you everyone for staying. So I'm going to allow us to speak now. One of the things I want us to talk about will be our reflections and what we think about this session we've listened to it twice now. And then what are the new things that are coming? What were the things you thought you got last week that we are finding out that this week is not, it's new. So these are, sorry, I'm trying to omit everyone. So if you'd like to speak, just use the raise hand icon, then you can unmute, and then you can speak. So what are the things you think are new? Are there new things you heard that you thought you heard before? What are your takeaway from this session? Let's have our opinions. The floor is open, so we can try and speak. So while I wait for first person to speak, one of the things I think stand out basically in the two from the two times for me is the strategy, that if you follow a format. Oh, okay, you can hear me? Someone said I'm not audible. All right, please, can you confirm if you can hear me, please? Oh, all right, thank you. Okay, so yeah, all right. So one of the things that stands out for me is the fact that it's good to be systematic, in the approach when you're writing your discussion section. Virtually every section of the paper, but then for today we're talking about the discussion section. Being systematic kinds of help you structure what you're saying, and oftentimes you don't miss anything. So just like it is in the discussion section, for instance, if you're doing analysis, one of the things that people who use software, get from it is the fact that you're able to structure your findings, and then there's a kind of a structure to it. So generally, having a structure, and a template for every section of your paper is one of the things that will make the work easy, and then will make what you're writing really stand out. So I'd like to invite Dr. Safia. You can please unmute. Safia Gatama. Yes, all right. So you can unmute yourself, please. Oh, all right. So good morning.
Hello, good morning, Doc.
All right. So please, can you tell us what your takeaway has been, listening to the discussion section? I know you're also part of the manuscript writing group. So let's have it.
Really, I've learned a lot I was like, did I not listen to this last week? Though last week I joined late, so I was okay. Thank God for the repetition. Actually, what I grabbed very well, I have to even screenshot that steps that she said we should follow in writing our discussions. And of course, I see it's very helpful. I was beginning to relate what I've been doing, and I say, I've not been putting the weaknesses or limitations of my research on that discussion, and I really see it's helpful because, of course, it's the weakness that will give way for another research that will make people to look for what to do again in future. So I really learned a lot. Thank you very much. Hello.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I didn't get I was muted. All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gatama. I'd like to ask us. I don't know who's going to respond to this, and that is what are the things that you think have helped you in writing discussions generally, either for your thesis or for your paper? What are the strategies that you've used in the past that has helped you? Who would like to say something here? And this is also in this may or may not include the things you have listened to. Are there other things that you think has helped you in the past? What strategies do you adopt that you feel will be very helpful to people? Just call someone randomly. Abidemi Fajobi. Sorry, your name is the one at the top, so you can omit. Abidemi Fajobi, you can omit if you are speaking. Okay. All right. Maybe when you're able to unmute, then to will. All right. Ali Abolaji, are you here? Ali M Abolaji, you can unmute. Sorry, at this point I want to confirm if I'm audible again. Adirogba Ibukun, can you unmute and let me know if I'm audible, please? Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Oh, okay. Thank you, Chima. All right, we have Professor Amidu here. Professor Abdul, are you able to unmute and contribute to our discussion, sir?
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, yes, good
morning, this is a very inciting discussion, and I must commend, first of all, the organizers and the facilitator for this wonderful session. I just hope that we can be able to, maybe we should, if we can have the slide too, to keep us abreast with because you have said so many things that we take for granted, and it is really what you have taught us. What you have taught us is you are making us to be thinking local, but then behaving internationally. That is adhering to the international practice, and it is one of the reasons that make our manuscript to be rejected all over, because we just think within our local enclave and then we don't open up. So you have opened us up to that we should always live up to the international practice, and especially now that the world is a global village, we have to really improve ourselves. Thank you very much for that incisive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the kind words. We're happy to have you. Abidemi Fajobi, man, do you want to say something?
No, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, I just want to appreciate the Prof. I want to appreciate Prof for the beautiful presentation, and I want to also request for the slide. I don't know if it's possible for us to have the recordings, the voice recording. So want to listen to it again and again. Thank you very much, ma.
All right. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for the kind words. So on the recording, I am out of town, so everything slowed down a bit. But then I will be back in town this week, next weekend, basically. So I think the upload will continue. It takes about 11 gigabytes, of data to upload each of the videos. So we'll continue the video upload next week. A link to our YouTube page has been posted in the chat box. So for those who want to see the videos, so please continue to visit our YouTube page. And of course, the manuscript writing session that was supposed to hold today will hold next week, Friday. It had to be postponed because our facilitator had an urgent and very pressing engagement. So that is why he could not come today. But then next week, Friday, we're going to meet him. Dr. Lukman is one of the highest, he's a professor now. So Professor Lukman is one of the most cited professors in Obafemi Awolowo University. Professor Morenike Ukpong, the Executive Director of Central Office of Research, is the most cited professor in Obafemi Awolowo University, and Dr. Lukman is either the second or third. So that is how much. So you can be sure that if he's coming to speak about what he knows. So yeah, thank you, Emmanuel Ares. I've just responded to that. The manuscript writing session will be visited next week, Friday. So let's just keep it a date. All right. So Sarafa Mawumi, do you want to say something? Sarafa Mawumi, do you want to say something? Okay, so
Mistake.
all right, so then if there is any question also, we can take one. I think I've heard questions on how to get the slide. So for the slides, we don't really have slides because sometimes people make use of these slides, but then the videos will continue to come on the page. So just be a bit patient with us. All the videos will come on the YouTube page. Thank you. Professor Amidu, sir. You can unmute, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really just want to make a little appeal. If we can get your link and some of the other, like Lukman and the rest of them, the most cited professors, we can get their link on either on not WhatsApp really, on LinkedIn and other academic this thing. We shall be very happy to follow such people, because one of the ways of learning is to network and collaborate. So I don't know if we can be able to have, if not all, at least one or two links to go a long way in. I've just followed the link in of the university on LinkedIn and YouTube and the rest of them. If we can have also individuals, it will also help us a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So generally, I think one of the ways to just reach people to join them is to just search for their names, especially on LinkedIn and maybe ResearchGate, or academia. It's just use their name. For instance, you can check Morenike Ukpong, out. And then that is the name of the executive director. Lukman Olasukomi will be coming next week. So when he comes, just look at the way his name is written, and then pick it and just search for them. I think that's for me, I think that's the fastest and easiest way to get these people. So yeah, that's that. So well, I think we are almost on the hour. And I want to thank you all for coming, for staying with us, and for being here. And then, of course, for listening to this the second time. Listening twice sometimes go a long way in helping to remember and helping to make use of what we learn. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you. We hope to see you next week. And then we believe that Professor Ukpong will be truly around and then be able to take our session next week. Thank you everyone. Thank you so much, and hope to see you next week.